Hi friends, my name is Mackenzie, also known as M to the Third, and this is a knit and chat video. So today I'm going to just be kind of telling you about some of the books that I've been reading, tell you generally what's been going on, and I'm going to knit while I do it. These videos are really just an opportunity for me to hang out and tell you what I've been doing that's not knitting specific. If you're wanting very knitting specific content, then I would suggest checking out all of my podcast episodes. I'm just trying some different things, and I find that when I do live streams, which I was very regularly doing weekly, I ended up talking a lot about books, and everyone was excited to share their recommendations, and so I wanted a spot on the channel to talk about all the books that I am reading for my own kind of cataloging and memory, but also just to share with you. So that's what I thought I would talk about today. I have a list of books that I've read recently. Some were ugh, so good. Some were okay. But yeah, I thought I would just try this and see how it goes. First off, I wanted to talk about what I am knitting, which is the Grouse Creek pullover. I've been talking about this one for a while, but I finally cast it on. Pardon, Maple has to come hang out when I start talking. But yeah, so the sleeves are separated, and it's looking pretty good. So I'll give you a more thorough update on that in the next podcast episode, but I just wanted to let you know what I've been working on today. I'm actually filming this on the summer solstice, which feels really nice. The weather the last few days has been very rainy and cold, in the 60s, 50s, and at one point even reaching down to the 30s in June. Hello. We've just been getting rain, which we've definitely needed, so it was nice, but the sun is out in full force again today. So, yeah. My morning started out a little goofy because I totally splashed hot oil on my hand, right in this right little as I was cooking breakfast, and oh, it hurts so bad. It's still tender when I touch it, but exactly where I hold the knitting needle, it's not quite touching it, but I did try to crochet earlier, and I was like, ooh, that's gonna have to be on pause for a couple of days. So so one of the other things, I think, if you watch a live stream, I feel like the live streams have been this platform for me to share with you things that I love that are not knitting related, because it's just sort of the flow of the conversation. And two things that I just don't talk about in the knitting podcast, but if you have spent any time following me on Instagram, in the Discord, or on a live stream, you will know that I love talking about food and I also love talking about reading and books. So let me start off with telling you what I was up to this weekend, because I do feel like it is relevant to the conversation. So I currently live in Portland, Oregon. I am rapidly approaching my 2-year mark since I have arrived in Portland. And prior to that, I was in Boston for 6 years. I had moved to Boston from California to attend library science school, and I graduated with my degree, and I did work at a library there until a year into the pandemic, when my partner and I decided to move to Portland, Oregon. And in so many ways, that was the right decision. There's not a ton that I miss about Boston, but one of the most important things that I do miss is my very good friend Molly. We actually didn't even find each other, so drama, until our last year. We were both in a 3-year program, and it wasn't until we were sort of moving into our final year that we really connected and started our friendship. And then we were both very sad when it was the right time for me to move away. And one of the things that really brought us together was the fact that we were both from the Western United States, her from Montana and me from California. So yeah, it was just sort of like, I had never felt like a regional pull or pride until I was somewhere where that wasn't, you know, the water that in which we were swimming in. And so it was, I ended up meeting a lot of Californians, a lot of people just not from the Northeast in general, and Molly was one of them. And so we basically, what we love to do together is eat and watch rom-coms and discuss rom-coms and our romance novels. And like, I mean, there's that, but then also we both have a really deep drive for community building and activism. And she is just someone I admire so much. I feel like I learned so much from her and her kindness and her view of the world. And we do have frequent phone calls and voice notes and photos back and forth, but you know, it doesn't quite, it's not quite the same as spending time in person together. So in just happenstance, her and her mom came out to Oregon for a wedding in October, which was days before my 30th birthday. And it was like the best surprise and thrill that we ended up being able to have a meal together. Kay was there, her mom was there, and we just like had such a nice time eating our favorite things, which are like cheese and wine. And so it was just like, it just worked out that way. It wasn't planned. And we were both so pleased that it worked out that way. Her 30th birthday was June 8th. And I was like, okay, so what if I come out for a weekend to Boston and we can just be together for a few days and, you know, celebrate your 30th. Both of us being able to celebrate our 30th birthdays together just seemed like such a great plan. And she was like, oh my God, amazing. And so I hunted for some good flight deals, and I was able to get direct flights from Portland to Boston, which I think otherwise I'm not sure it would have been possible because, yeah, when it's 6 hours of travel, like via plane, you know, and then there's the buffer on either end of getting to the airport early and arriving and waiting for your bag and all that. But if like the actual flight time was like 8 hours plus the buffer, it just like felt like it would have been impossible. So I treated myself kindly and got a direct flight, which I'm now very excited to know exists. And so this was kind of the itinerary. On Wednesday after work, so I hosted knit night until 8 on Wednesday. So I finished up knit night, closed up, and then drove home. And then Kay loaded my suitcase into the car, and we drove to the airport, which I actually live very, very close to the Portland airport. And I flew out at 10:30 p.m. And it was a red eye, and I arrived in Boston at like 7:30 a.m., which was like 4:30 a.m. my time. So to say I was a little tired would be accurate. And I was just like so uncomfortable on the plane. The guy next to me was just like passed out, and I was like, so good for you. I love that for you. I watched a movie, listened to an audiobook, and I must have fallen asleep a couple of times, but I definitely did not get a good amount of sleep. So I arrived in Boston Logan, waited for like half an hour to get just like a coffee to try and wake myself up, and then I took the T, which is the rail or the public transit system, to Molly's house, where she and her lovely cat Penny greeted me and made me some of the best home fries I've ever had, which was just like it was so sweet. So we were just like so excited to see one another and chat, and then she was like, do you need a nap? And I was like, I don't know if I'll even be able to fall asleep. And so I laid down on her couch, and I truly believe I entered REM within like a minute of my head hitting the pillow. So I took a nap, and it felt like I was asleep for forever, but apparently it was only like an hour, if that. And then we just caught up, and then the first thing we decided to do was to head to, in the neighborhood that I lived in for the first few years I was in Boston that she still lives in. Down the street, there's like, kind of like drinks on the lawn, where you go and you like exchange money for tokens, which you can turn in for beer, wine, or like a cocktail. And so we got some Aperol spritzes. They were freaking phenomenal. And we hung out and just kind of like took in the sights and caught up more. And there were so many kids, which the neighborhood always has a lot of children, and like that's not unusual, but they were all really young, and I was like, oh my god, the last time we were here was 4 years ago, and I don't think any of these children were born. So it's just another like pandemic baby boom like moment of just like understanding how many children were born. So yeah, that was really funny, just like a like moment. And then we headed over to the new location of one of my favorite restaurants, which is called The Haven, and it is a Scottish pub, and it is where I used to have knit nights with some of my knitting buddies. And they have just like amazing comfort food, fish and chips, which is what I got, shepherd's pie, chicken pot pie, mussels, yeah, just really good. Deep fried Mars bar for dessert, you know, the works. So we went there for dinner, and on the train platform I actually ran into one of my knitting friends, Elizabeth, who frequently leaves comments on this video. So in the off chance that you're watching, Elizabeth, hi, it was so nice to see you for a second. What a thrill. And then that night I passed out. So the next day we hung out, and she made the home fries again, and this time I was like, tell me how you make these amazing home fries. And let me tell you what she does and what I have been doing since I got back. So the first thing is that, which I would never have thought of to do, but it's very brilliant, is russet potatoes work, I think, I would hazard to say the best. That's what I've been using since I got back. But you peel a russet potato, and then you dice it into like little cubes. And then you put it into like a little glass measuring cup and microwave it. So I've been microwaving it from anywhere from like 2.5 to 3 minutes. And then I kind of lay it out on a paper towel and pat it dry so that it's as dry as possible. Then I heat up some oil in a very, very hot pan and then put them in there. Are you catching that this may be how I burnt my hand this morning? I've been fine the last few days, but one of the potatoes fell and I dropped it in from too high and the oil just splashed. Anyway. And then the other kind of like secret to this is to use Joe's. I will post a photo of this amazing seasoning. Apparently Molly's parents went to New Orleans in like the 80s and found this Joe's seasoning and have been buying it in bulk from them ever since. And it was so good that I basically sitting at the table eating my breakfast of like amazingly soft scrambled eggs and potatoes, ordered it to the house. So we've been using it on the breakfast potatoes, but I also last night used it on some like baked chicken breasts, and it's so good. I'll link it down below because it's just a really, really great spice blend. So we did that, and then we watched one of the movies that we'd talked about watching. Molly had been listening to a podcast episode with Jason Mantzoukas on it, and he recommended this rom-com, and we were like, I love that Jason just recommended this rom-com for us. And it is called Rye Lane, and it is about two like 20-something Black Londoners who have just this jaunty little beginning of a romance. And the way that it's shot is so beautiful. There's a lot of like fish eye, not like very dramatic fish eye, but definitely like this sort of distorted view. So they're like having a conversation, but you can see a lot of the background. There's a lot of very bright colors. Like the set design was just fantastic. And then just like the actual story of them was so sweet and funny and just really well done. It was such a joy to watch. I was so glad I got to watch it with her. And I will say that one of my favorite things that happened is that there is a taco stand or a burrito stand that they go to, and it is called Love Guactually, and Colin Firth is manning the burritos. He is the burrito monger, and it was so funny. We were like just thrilled. It was great. So we did that, and then that night we went to Molly's favorite restaurant, which is so good. And I'd eaten there for breakfast a few times when I lived in Boston, but I'd never been for dinner. And it is called Juliet. It's very, very, it's just like, it's really good. They've got great cheeses. They've got great like seasonal produce. Their menu kind of switches a little bit. They've got a great wine selection. And I had an orange wine. Molly had a cocktail that had like kimchi simple syrup in it, which is amazing, and gochujang like salt along the rim. It was very cool. And we got this like burrata, cucumber, melon, and like citrus salad for an app. Beautiful. And then I was able to get mussels because we were in Boston. Hello. So mussels with fries, and then in like a white wine, parsley and garlic sauce. And then Molly got like one of their omelets, which they make just like fantastic omelets. It was like the perfect summer meal. And then we met up with a bunch of my friends for drinks, that like our mutual friends, for drinks. So that was lovely. We saw Nikki and Zoe, who were pitching Love Island to Molly the whole time, which I was so amused by. Kay and I, during the summer, love Love Island, and we didn't know that any of our friends watched it. So during the pandemic, we were talking to Zoe and Nikki, and they were like, wait, what? We watch Love Island. So now we are like in this text thread the whole season, which is like 2 months long, okay, about just like the shenanigans. And so I've always kind of like nudged Molly, but you know, when someone doesn't have interest in watching something, then you can't. But she's part of Bachelor Nation, but Love Island is very different from Bachelor Nation. And so Zoe and Nikki were just like relentless the entire time we were drinking. And they were like, please, like, let me tell you about it. And Zoe's like, it won a BAFTA, which it has. It has won a BAFTA. And so then, yeah, it was very comical, just like how much they were like, please experience this with us. And then I saw my former manager, who is now like very close with a couple other friends of mine. So all of them showed up, which was very sweet. And we had more wine and cocktails. And it was just a freaking blast. The one thing I forget about Boston is, I mean, not that I forgot, but like forget the like tactile experience of being so sweaty all the time because of the humidity. That's not my favorite part of the Northeast, I will say that. So we got home after like some train delays, and on Sunday our plan was to go out earlier in the day and then to come back and just like watch a bunch of movies and eat some cheese. So we went to a new yarn shop that has opened since I left, called the Boston Fiber Company. It's queer owned. The space is beautiful. They have a lot of friends of mine. They carry a lot of their products like Knit Collage and Krista Jekyll bags. So that was really sweet to see. But they also have some yarns that I have not seen before, so that was very cool. I picked up a skein of I'm Fully Spun, and also a skein I'll pop like a little video of what I got in there because I don't know the name off the top of my head of the other yarn, but it's like a breed specific wool and I was very excited to see it. So, for breakfast that morning, we went to another favorite restaurant of mine called Tate. It is like an Israeli bakery that also serves breakfast. One of the best things to get there if you're eating with multiple people. It's a little tough if you're just one person. However, if there's a will, there's a way. So don't let me stop you. But they do a shakshuka, and they usually do like a seasonal shakshuka, which is gorgeous. I particularly love the fall one, but they're all really good. Kay and I would sometimes get that and split it. But they have amazing baked goods, and I would always get a biscuit with soft scrambled eggs with cheese, and then they give you this little like tomato side salad that's like a cold tomato, vinegar, olive oil, salt and pepper salad with some like onion, some red onion. And it was just like so, I think the thing about visiting 2 years after leaving is that it was like the perfect amount of time to come back and feel just like very lovingly nostalgic for a place. I mean, I think that was helped by the fact that I was like exploring with Molly and we were like touching all of our faves. But it was just like, it was just lovely. And I just am so happy that I was able to make the trip happen. So then our last stop before heading home was Formaggio, which is a beautiful cheese shop. I'm going to post a photo of what our cheese setup was. And so we asked the cheesemonger for help kind of picking a couple additional cheeses, and we got some pickled veggie, we got some fruit, and one of the things that Molly did, again, like, it's just like so fun hanging out with a friend that gets you inspired. You know what I mean? She served these like beautiful European potato chips, right? So they're like super light, not super salty, and she just put lemon zest on top of them, and it was freaking brilliant. I loved it. We ate popcorn and we watched, I was like, what is a movie that you, like your comfort movie? I think we all have them. Like I have a few on Apple TV. In fact, I just watched one of them last week. One of mine is It's Complicated with Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin and John. Okay, I'm using a new camera and I'm still getting used to like what the memory card situation is, so I probably need to get a bigger memory card, but we're going. Okay, cheese. Okay, we watched, oh yeah, so I was asking her what her favorite, you know, we've been talking about our favorite like comfort movies, and I was talking about It's Complicated, which is one that I know that she also likes, and she was like, well, I just asked you about the movie About Time. I'm gonna make sure that that's what it's called. And so she was like, oh, well, I was just telling you about the movie About Time, and that's definitely one of my comfort movies. I like own it on Apple, and I was like, oh, let's do that. That sounds perfect. And it was like a rainy day, and yeah, it was just, I was like, yes. So it has Rachel McAdams in it, and Bill Nye, and it was about like a young lad who discovers he can travel in time, and it's sort of like shenanigans that happen as he's like fixing things and adjusting things, and it's very sweet. It definitely had me crying at the end. It was very reminiscent of the book This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. Like I got it, like it was just like a poignant time travel story. I really liked it. I would definitely watch it like again, especially like having the memory of watching it with Molly. And we ate our cheese and it was just lovely. And then we like finished the movie and we're like, should we watch this other movie? There was another movie that we'd talked about, a Kelly Reichardt movie, but it was like we knew that it was going to be like a movie we had to like, you know, be there for. It was just gonna, it was gonna challenge us, and we were kind of like, eh. And so Molly was like, should we watch Love Island? And I was like, yes, we absolutely should. So we went to one of my favorite seasons, and the season that Zoe and Nikki were like, if you're gonna watch any, you gotta watch this one. And it's actually one of the South African seasons. I tried to watch that one this year, and I was just like, I think one season of Love Island a year is enough. But this was from a few years back and was one that Kay and I watched during the pandemic. So we watched the first episode, and she was like, this is not what I thought it was gonna be at all. And I was like, yeah, right? And so we ended up watching 2 more episodes, 3 in total, and we were like texting Nikki and Zoe the whole time, and she was like, okay, I love this. I get it. This is not what I thought it would be. And I was like, yeah, I'm so excited. So that was kind of how we wrapped up our little trip. And I packed my bag up, and I had to leave at 4:30 in the morning. My allergies right now are something else. So I had to leave at 4:30 in the morning to get to Boston Logan, which, wow, what a shit show compared to Portland. Little tiny airport. And got on the plane at like 7:30 a.m. I think. No, I'm sorry, not got on the plane. We left at 7:30 a.m., which, mind you, 4:30 a.m. in Boston time is 1:30 a.m. Portland time. So I was just all kinds of screwed up. And so I got home, or I landed around 10:30, and realized I had messed up. Just like all the time changes, I had messed up and thought that I needed Kay to come get me at 1:30, but it was actually 10:30, and they had something to do from 11 to 1. So I was like, shit. So I texted dear Tim, and I was like, Timothy, please come get me. And he was like, I got you. And so we drove back to my house, which is, again, very close to the airport. And then I realized I was locked out of the house. So I was like, I guess, can you take me to work? And he was like, of course I can. So I went and hung out at the store for like an hour and a half until Kay could come pick me up. I would have just sat on the deck, but it was pouring rain, like downpour. And I was like, shit. So it was quite comical, but I got back, and then, Kay was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, it's all right. So we just had a nice cozy night. We ate some Thai food, and then again, I conked out very early. So yes, that was a few days ago. Today is Wednesday. And, yeah, it was just like, I don't know. I guess I feel very lucky that we were able to make this trip work for me. It was so sweet. It inspired me. Being with Molly just is so rejuvenating. It was so sweet. And I would just say, like, if you have a bestie who does not live in your city, like, and it's possible for you, and maybe you've been like, oh, well, there's other things going on, just, like, go spend a chill weekend together. Like, please. Friendship is so important, and I just feel like I just feel very grateful that we were able to see each other twice this year, despite living on opposite ends of the country. So yeah, that's that. So thanks for listening to me ramble. It was so funny because I called Kay like the night after we had seen all our friends, and I was like so happy to hear about how you're doing, and everyone was missed you, blah blah blah. And I was talking about Juliet, and Kay was just like, you realize you take your friends on better dates than you take me, right? And I was like, yeah, because we eat out all the time together, but maybe what we need to do is like save up 5 times of going out to go to like one really nice dinner. But it was kind of funny. I was like, I'm so sorry for you. So, yeah. On the way home, I finished up a book that I've been reading for a little bit now. So now let's enter into the book talk. Not book talk like TikTok, because that's a thing, but book talk with an L. ALK, ALK. So as you know, I think a lot of you know that I really love cozy mysteries. The last time I did a knit and chat, I kind of talked about some of my favorite knit lit books that I've read, and some of my not so favorite knit lit books, but that really got me into cozy mysteries, which are essentially, if you've never heard the term, are mysteries where a murder happens. They're very of Agatha Christie. So like a murder will happen in like a small community, and amateur sleuths kind of figure it out. And I have a few knitting ones that I really like, but one of the things that I definitely notice about the genre is how white they are. I don't think this is like unique to cozies. You know, it's kind of just like, you know, predominantly white characters and stuff have been pushed in publishing. I don't have to go on a spiel about this, but there's definitely been a push for representation in literature, and even like fluffy, fun literature. And so I stumbled across a cozy mystery series that has just started, and the first one in the series is called Body and Soul Food. It's the story of twins who kind of find each other later in life. One has gone through the foster care system, the other one was adopted really young, and they have come together to open a joint bookstore / soul food cafe. And it takes place in the Pacific Northwest, like outside of Washington. Seattle is like also a common background to the story. So that's always fun to read, like regionally familiar or, you know, local to you places. And his best friend dies, and they have to figure out who did it. And I didn't love the narrator. I listened to the audiobook version. I actually was kind of flipping back and forth because I got both of them from the library at the same time. But I didn't love the narrator. I felt like some of her inflections were like a little off for me. And I think a lot of the times with these cozies, and I've talked about this a little before, the characters are usually like in their 20s for some reason. And yet the narrators are always like a little older. And so it just like the narration didn't feel like it matched what was happening. But regardless, I listened to it. I was sort of listening to it as I fell asleep and like on the plane. So I kind of feel like I listened to it twice because I would listen and fall asleep and then be like, I don't remember. But it sort of went where I was expecting, but in a way that was unexpected. And I really enjoyed it. So that's first in a new series. I think the second one is already out. And just so you know, I will list all of the books that I'm talking about down below for you to find on Amazon, but I also strongly encourage you to check them out from your local library. I've been using Libby a lot lately, which is an app that most US and Canadian libraries have where you can download audiobooks and Kindle versions or e-versions of books. Maple's come back. So that was my most recent finish, which I did really enjoy. It was a very sweet read. And in the back, there are soul food recipes. One of the recipes that they talk about in the book is a soul roll, which is basically like leftover collards or mac and cheese wrapped in a wonton wrapper and fried and served with hot sauce. Does that not sound so good? Oh. And also just the recipe that they did for collards was so sweet the way that they wrote it. They were like, you know, listen to your instincts. Like, there's like no one I know actually like measures out their ingredients, and just the way that she wrote the recipe actually like made me teary because it's just like, it's so nice. So let me continue in this vein and talk about like some of the cozies that I've finished recently. And I cannot be trusted to remember, so of course I have a little list. So there is an audiobook narrator that I quite like, and I was looking through, her name is Rachel Delude. She has read the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers, and I like her narration. I like her voice. So I was looking through other books that she's narrated, which is not something I do often to find books, but I was just sort of like curious and booping around my phone. And I saw that she had narrated this series that was called the Urban Druid series. And I was like, oh, the cover is hella goofy. But I was curious, and I just kind of wanted to see what direction it was going in. So I listened to it. I got it again from the library, and it was essentially a young woman who finds out that she is, like, her family has been druids. Her dad kind of cut off from her, like, ancestral home in Ireland, and she goes back to Ireland to learn from her grandparents, who she doesn't really know. And I really wanted to like it. I was very open to liking it, but the girl was kidnapped like 5 times throughout the course of this book. It was a little excessive. I was like, why does she keep getting like kidnapped by different people and then like away from her family for 3 chapters and then like, oh God, I found my way back home. I was just a little like having an issue with it. The narration was great for like all the Irish accents. I thought that she did a great job. The other thing is that like her family was all police officers, which I was just like, why they gotta be police officers? So I don't know. I would probably rate it like so I know that like it's controversial to use like a star system in, you know, it's like if 5 if you enjoyed it, I think is a lot of people's like inclination, I guess. But I actually saw this woman on TikTok who like did a rating system. I'll link the TikTok down below because I think it makes a lot of sense for me, and that's kind of what I've been using lately. So the general gist of it is like a 1 is if you don't finish the book. A 2 is like if you finish it and you were like, okay, cool. A 3 is if you finish it and you're like thinking about it and you like enjoyed it. A 4 is like, okay, this is like sitting with me for like a couple of months after I read it and I enjoyed it. And a 5 is like, I'm going to carry what this book sort of message is with me for a while. So based off of that rating system, which to me makes a lot of sense. I know it might feel harsh, but following that line of thought, I would definitely give this book like a 2. Like I finished it, I read it, it was fine. Yeah, and that's kind of it. The other cozy series that I have continued to come back to is the Vampire Knitting Club series. I think I'm on book 9 or 10. Did I write that down? No, I don't know which one I just finished, but I have one of those also in my queue from the library, so that's coming up next. But those are always very enjoyable. They're floofy. They're like, I don't know, I end up listening to them about 6 hours at 1.3 speed. Yeah, I enjoy them. Like, I don't really know what else to say. But yeah, so that's ones that I keep going back to. That's another one where the narrator definitely does not match with like the vibe of the story and the young protagonist. But yeah, I really like that. I've mentioned before that she like was like debating between like the hot vampire and a cop, and I was like, girl, well, don't worry, she does not go for the cop. So but yeah, that one just keeps like growing on me. I just always enjoy it. She's a witch, and then like she has like a vampire knitting club that like lives in her basement of her knitting shop. It's it's goofy, but I like it. Yeah, I would say like my main genres of book are like cozies, whether that is a mystery or like a romance. And then I also really like mysteries that are like darker and like horror and folk horror books. So I know that might seem like a pretty dramatic like veer, but that's like kind of I'm a Libra. We got to find the balance in all of the things. So the lightheartedness and like the seriousness and scaring the crap out of myself. So I also just finally finished a book that I had started during Vlogmas, which is called Season of Love by Helena Greer. So, so like right before, like basically leading into Vlogmas season, which is, leading up to Christmas, I asked Kay to pick me out a queer holiday romance book, and I was like, please get me one so that I can read it leading up to Christmas, which was great in theory, tough in practice just because everything was so chaotic during Christmas and I spent most of it away from home. But they went in and they got this adorable book. Their choice was A+. And it was a sapphic romance about a fat butch Christmas tree farmer and a Jewish tiny artist. And both of them ended up with shares of a Christmas tree farm that had been left to them by the Jewish one's aunt. And, it was enemies to lovers, but it wasn't very like strife. And it was very sweet. So I had like started that and I was probably a little less than halfway through, and then just like over the course of a couple weeks I just like finished it off, and it was very sweet and charming. And there's going to be a second one released for this season, based on 2 other characters that I'm definitely gonna pick up and I'm excited to read. So that should be really fun. It was very sweet. So if you're looking for a holiday romance, and also if you're like, wow, okay, holiday season is so like hit you over the head, but also I'm Jewish, it was a nice like to see that representation. And Kay read aloud some of it for me, and it was just like sappy and fun and cute. So now I'm gonna start veering towards the more dramatic and like a little bit more dark books. Okay. So the first one that I finished recently was the first one that sort of like veers away from like cozy is called Wayward by Amelia Hart. This came up in me searching for like folk horror, witchy kind of narratives, which is a genre that I really like and have talked about. And I talked about in my like first Knit and Chat video. But so basically how this story goes is that there's 3 generations of women in this family line. They're not direct, like it's like in one case it's an aunt, in one case it's a great grandmother, but so like it's the women in a line, but it's not just like grandma, mom, daughter, which I liked. And so one of them is like cottage living days. I'm really not good with my British like historical point like periods, but it was like witch burning at the stake kind of like days, stuff like that. So that was like the first one that we hear about. The second one is taking place in like the 40s, and it's a young woman named Violet. And then the last one is like present day. And so it kind of talks about how these women are walking through the world kind of like just as weirdos, and how, you know, when you're not conforming to the normative narrative, that people can see you as a threat, and sort of how they like make a place for themselves, and then it gets like witchy in a very cool way. And they're very like close with the land, close with animals. All of them have like a deep connection with their environments, and in turn it comes to help them out of various situations. I really enjoyed it. I would probably, on my little scale, would give it like a 3.5. It wasn't like the best thing I'd ever read, but I did really enjoy it, and it's like sat with me a little bit. So, yeah, that would be a good one to check out if you're. I would feel like a late summer vibe for that book would be really perfect. Let's see. So now we're kind of moving into like the actual darker thriller books. So if you're someone who like doesn't love true crime, doesn't love horror, but does like Agatha Christie level thriller, like this is like, might be pushing you a little bit, but I think it would be worth it in most cases. The one I finished most recently is one that I've been hearing about a lot on TikTok and just ended up being available for me to check out, so I checked it out, and it was called The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Very, very Agatha Christie-esque, where, like, you know someone has died at the beginning of the book, but you're not sure who, and of course you're not sure why, and it becomes pretty clear that it is a murder, but again, you don't know why, and everyone has a motive. And just the way that it tells the story, I thought was really smart. Again, like very harkens to Agatha Christie, but not in a hit you over the head way. I really, really enjoyed it. There were definitely some twists that I did not see coming. And then there were some that I suspected, but not in the right way. And it was just like really, it was enjoyable. So again, I would probably give this one like a 3, maybe 3.5, somewhere in there. I enjoyed it. Yeah, that was a enjoyable one. I kept telling Kay, like, when I would get to a specific part, I'd be like, oh my god, this is what just happened. And they were like, are you kidding me? I was like, it's very drama, but I love it. The next one in this realm is by an author that I have read before. Her name is Lorith Ann White. She wrote a trilogy called the Drowned Girls trilogy, and I loved that trilogy. I blew through those books. I ended up gifting them to my dad. We have very similar thriller and horror interests, so it's kind of nice that we get to share books. He was always reading Stephen King and Dean Koontz novels when I was growing up. So I sent those to him and he really enjoyed them. But she wrote those, so I was excited to check out a newer book of hers, and this one was called In the Woods? In the Dark. So again, the author is Lorith Ann White. I didn't love this one. You know how, like, you're like, okay, this was inspired by, like, Agatha Christie, fine. This was too hit you over the head with it. So as I was reading it, I was like, this is really reminding me of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Remote location, people are being killed one by one, there's, like, little dolls that sort of represent all of the people, and I was like, okay. And then it was like, and then the Agatha Christie book was sitting on the table, and we were like, oh my god, that's what's happening here. And I was like really? I was just a little like, I don't know, you guys. I don't know if that's the way I would do that. So I don't know. It was like, again, it was like too on the nose. So I was a little like unimpressed with it. I'm not like, that part just kind of like threw me for a loop. I thought that it was fine, but it just like wasn't the best book that I would have read. Yeah, so I would definitely rate it like a 2.5 maybe. So, yeah. But I am going to end with, I'm truly saving the best for last. So last year I went to Camp Starlight, which is a little camping retreat that we put together that the store that I work at hosts. And I taught last year and it was super fun. It was a really great time. And I'm not 100% sure why this was, but there were a bunch of like people who worked in the publishing industry. And I'm not sure why that was, but there were like 4 or 5 people and we like just ended up talking about books a lot. And one of the ladies who I just chatted with and just adored was Danya, who is an editor, but she's also published a couple books. And recently she won like an Edgar Allan Poe award. We started following each other on Instagram at that point, and I was like, oh my God, so sweet. So I was like, I'm gonna check it out. Like, it seems like it's getting a lot of good press, and not that that would sway me in either direction, but like I was like excited to check it out. So I downloaded it and I did get the audiobook version. And when I tell you, I could not put this book down. I was like, you know, it was like that thing where you go to work and you're like, ugh, I have to stop listening to my book while I'm at work. And then like the second you get in the car, you're like turning it on just to get like that 15 to 20 minutes of more time with it. And then I like evaded work the next morning to just finish it. And it is called Notes on an Execution. And I just think it's like a perfect book for the conversations that are happening right now around true crime. I'm one of those people, like, and like I am absolutely someone who listened to like every episode of My Favorite Murder for many years. And then like I just kind of got to a point where I was like, this isn't really doing anything for me anymore. But, you know, I grew up with my mom watching Lifetime movies, my grandma constantly watching Forensic Files, and just like, you know, like a lot of us do, having that like morbid curiosity. And I really, really loved My Favorite Murder. And like, yeah, just it got me through like a lot of hours of working in the archives. And I, you know, as many of us are aware, I think are starting to see how exploitative it is, like becoming the caliber of an industry that it has become. I think what really like turned my stomach was the Gabby Petito case. I think a lot of people, it was just fucking sad, man. And I was just like, that does not feel good. But I think that even though it was happening like kind of real time, we need to remember that like the stories that are being told are, even though it was real time, like the stories that we're told still feel very real and present for a lot of the victims and the victims' families. And so I was already like having this like unease of it, and I'd slowed down on my consumption of it a lot. And so I saw this book and I was very curious. And so essentially it is the story of a serial killer, and it's told through the perspective of women who were impacted by him and his crimes throughout his life. And I think the piece of it that really struck me about it was at the end, it was sort of just like she made her point in a beautiful, poetic, not hit you over the head way, which is just that like this man is not significant. He did this and he's had this impact, and this man, like, he had a tough life, but a lot of people have tough lives and they don't do what he did. And I just was like, it like gave me goosebumps. I was just like, whoa. So this is like the one of like all of these books that I have read recently that I like has a 5-star in my book. So if you're a true crime fan and, you know, you're maybe having a little bit of that, like, that feeling that I was discussing, I would really encourage you to check this book out, support Danya. I was able to send her a little Instagram message, and I was like, I just want to say that this book was so good. And it was just a sweet, like, it's really special to like read someone by someone you know and just like to feel that impact of it and to be able to tell them. So, yeah, it was really good. Yeah. And like I said, like 5 is for a book that like sticks with you for a long time. And I think that one has been sticking with me and will continue to stick with me, especially in like the climate we're in regarding true crime discussions and whatnot. So yeah, I really hope you check it out. Again, I'm going to list like all of these books down below in case any of them intrigued you. I would love to know what you're reading right now, what you're listening to. And yeah, because you never know when you're going to get a really great recommendation. Some of the things coming up on my to read and to listen to list are a book called Lapvona, which is a book that was recommended to me like in the realm of folk horror and like witchy horror. So that's on my bedside table that I've been reading. I'm reading, a big one that a lot of my Discord has been talking about is called Fourth Wing, which has, like, I think the first print of it sold completely out. My library has many, many copies. It's just a really popular kind of fantasy book that's out right now. And I'm also reading a cozy mystery series that's about like a witch who owns an Airbnb with her aunts. So very Sabrina like adjacent. But yeah, that one's been really fun. So yeah, let me know how you liked this. How you like this format and this video and just me chatting. I thought it would just be like a nice cozy thing that you could put on, you know, when you're knitting or even doing like housework or whatnot. And you allowed me to get some rows in, that's for sure. I'm going to make myself a beautiful lunch of potatoes and eggs and braised greens. And then I'm going to take little Miss Maple here to the dog park for a jaunt. And then I'm going to be heading to work this evening. Yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I had a blast kind of reflecting on the books that I've been reading, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And I'll see you very soon for a vlog and a new podcast episode and all of those good things. So until next time, thanks for hanging out. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.